Hello, hello, hello. Hello guys, it's Leonardo again with a new tutorial. And I know it's been a while since my last tutorial, but my day job sometimes doesn't let me. Now in my YouTube I am publishing some of my new animated shorts and some collaborations. And doing the YouTube content sometimes take me 2 or 3 days for the long tutorials. And sometimes it's hard to find the time to do content, but I have lots of ideas. And every time I finish a new animation, it gives me ideas and useful tips that I want to share. This tip is about something really cool. A tip from a user called Gaylie. This one was published in the Clip Studio Tips and it blew my mind. It shows how to animate the Distort tool or the free transform tool using keyframe interpolation. What I mean is that you can distort a layer and animate this distortion in time with the keyframes, which is quite interesting. But first, I want to talk about this shot from the 11-second club competition in April. I feel really proud of this shot because for the first time, I can feel a little bit of life in one of my animations. And I know this is just my perception, but somebody commented the same in a Discord I follow, and that made me so proud. I know for some people this is not good enough, but for me it was an amazing feeling to animate something that was kind of alive. But this is not the reason I want to talk about this shot. The reason is that I did something really simple that made a big difference, and I want to show you what. These are my main keys and breakdowns. Sorry, I need to silence this layer. So what I did was to start with the main movements and make a kind of nod movements like saying no. Then she raised her head and looked up. She turned the head a little bit. This motion tells the story, is enough, but it didn't feel alive. So I thought, what can she do that feels normal in this kind of situation? And I start thinking about the legs, moving the legs like when you are sitting waiting for something. I do this sometimes. I move my legs when I am waiting or whatever. So to do that, I did something really simple. I'm going to show you here. This is the character, just a static reference. I want to move the legs, so what I did was to create 2 different layers for each leg, and I activate the keyframes. I'm going to show you the layer in the timeline, and I create these interpolations here. I didn't do the animation with the hold interpolation, I did it with the smooth one in the key poses. But later I create in between frames 2 animating twos and stop the movement in the correct place. What I did was to change the interpolation to hold. To animate this movement, I just rotate the layer. I change the rotations, and if you check here, I make this smaller. You're going to see the center of rotation in here. This is the way the layer moves. And the other layer moves like this. The animated layer moves this way, and the movement is quite convincing. It took me no time to make it, and it made a big difference. It's just a simple movement, and the final result is quite superior. This is the complete animation. The movement of the head was the hard part, but the movement of the legs was the action that made this animation feels alive. Of course, this is just my opinion. You can disagree. Okay, another thing you can notice is that she has a cross in her mouth. I found that when I did the previous shot, the character head was moving in the same way when she was talking, and when I drew the mouth felt disconnected. Someone even commented in a Discord channel that the mouth looks floaty, and he was right. I checked the animation and the mouth moved at a different speed of the head. So what I am doing here is to have a clear reference, and this will be my baseline for using the free transform tool technique. Let me explain first what I want to do with this technique I want to share. Using the same technique from the video Papagayo and Clip Studio Paint, I create the lip sync for this shot. This is how it looks with the reference mouth. This way you can have the mouth shape in the correct frame. I will erase the audio and save this mouth. And this is the file object for the animation. The distorted animation layer looks this way. In a new file, I'm going to make a simple drawing. Maybe it's better to create a rectangle. With the rectangle tool, where is here? I will make this rectangle. Yep, I can. Let's change it for one that has fill. So we have this shape in a normal keyframe animation. We need to create a timeline, maybe 70 frames for this timeline. If I activate the keyframes for this layer, I can move the layer like this. I can do this kind of animation, but that's not what I want. So I'm going to undo this. One of the things you can do to make the animation more convincing is that you can change the layer type. In here, convert layer. You can convert this layer changing from raster to image material layer. When you do this, the icon will appear, this icon, and when you animate, the animation size is not longer going to be the size of the canvas, but the size of my drawing. You can see I can move it here, and it will interpolate the animation. I can rotate the object and it will animate the movement. But if you drag the corners, it will change the scale, not the shape. I don't know, you understand what I meant. So I'm going to go back here. What I want to use is the free transform tool, changing the shape of the object like this. But what Gaylie discovered is quite cool, and I think it's kind of a hack. To do the animation, you first do a small transformation. Something like this is okay. Remember, the layer must be changed to image material. When you enable the keyframe animation, you can now move the object normally, like you will do, but you can move the vertex now and animate the distort object. It looks almost like a change of perspective. If you do something like this, you can see the change of the perspective. I didn't know this was possible. It was crazy. The effect is cool, and you can do the same with the file objects. Let's import a file object and show how it works. A created file object, sorry. This one is the mouth. So when you have a file object, you can start by transforming the object a little bit, like what we do before, okay? Then you can activate the keyframes and make some changes. First, change the position of this corner, and then in this place. This one here, change the perspective, yeah. Then change the perspective again. You can see the result is quite amazing. You can create a loop. You can copy the first frame and paste it maybe here. Maybe a little bit later because it's too close to this key. And you can see I create a loop and the object changes the perspective in time. With this method you can animate every corner individually. And now let's go to the main animation. Normally what I do is to import my file object here, my created file object, sorry. Now I have my object here and use this layer as reference to paint the mouth over the character. And I know this layer is synchronized with the audio, so you can start painting the mouth in here, but it's not easy. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. With this technique, you can start by placing the animated mouth in the actual position of the mouth of the character. So I'm going to find the mouth layer in the timeline. This is my layer. I can distort the object in Edit, Transform, Free Transform, and then move the corner a little bit. a little bit because you can have the start position of every corner in the correct place at the beginning if you want. And then when I activate the keyframe animation, you can continue changing the position of each corner and adjust the mouth to the perspective of the face. Because I know what the center is, I can place the mouth in the correct place. I can check if it works, and even I can change the color maybe to make it easy to spot. We can change the color for a red color, and this will be my reference now. We can put it under the folder maybe. Okay. So when she moves the head, I find the extreme position here, so I can change the perspective to the next position. I can check if the movement is correct. Where is the layer? This one. I'm using the smooth interpolation for the animation. I can move the key here and let's check again. Let's find our next key. She raises her head until here in the breakdown. I feel like the movement is too fast. I can change this shape here a little bit. What I am doing is to adjust the mouth position in advance to use as reference for my final animation. You see, she goes like this and she moves a little bit up, so I will move it up. And I can even edit frame by frame if it's necessary. I can go here, this needs to go here. I can do it in every place I feel it needs to. I can do broad movements first and refine them later. If the character is static, I can copy the previous frame and paste it here and continue the animation. With this technique, you can be as precise as you want or use it as rough as you want. It's just to have like the rough position for the mouth. But the main purpose is to avoid the floating mouth that it can happen sometimes. Remember, this is not the final mouth. This is just a reference to know where to paint the final mouth. I create the cross mouth in a separate layer so I can turn it off and I can check if my animation works and is in the right position. So this is my reference and this is not the actual shape of the mouth again. If you want to freeze the position, you can create new keyframes for every second frame. This is because sometimes you are not in the correct place, so the animation can be out of center. When all the keys are placed, you can change the interpolation to hold. Now, every time you go to a specific frame, you are not going to have any problems. I will now show the final result, my final line art animation, and compare it with the reference mouth. It's easy to spot how different the mouth shape is. This one is the reference and this is the final animated one. For my final animation, I create smooth transition between different mouth shapes when it was appropriate. Let's see how it looks.
Starving and you took forever, so I wanted to make food. Starving and you took forever, so I wanted to make food.
You can see how much better it is. So this is the technique I want to share today. This is a short tip, but I think it's quite useful. So thank you again, guys. Thank you for watching. Bye.